She would never admit it out loud, but there is a hidden weak point inside every woman, a point that, when touched, breaks her defenses, shatters her certainty, and makes her chase you without even knowing why. Machiavelli already warned us, whoever controls perception controls desire. And that is exactly what you're about to learn. This is not magic, this is not luck. This is strategy, a form of seduction so simple, so calculated, and so effective that it almost feels illegal. Prepare yourself, because after this, you will never see the game the same way again. She will never speak it, but inside every woman, there is a quiet point, a silent trigger, that reacts in strange ways when a man appears with the perfect combination of presence, mystery, and intention. It has nothing to do with beauty, money, or memorized lines. It is about understanding the emotional architecture of the feminine, the same way Machiavelli understood the architecture of the human mind. Once you grasp this mechanism, seduction starts to feel almost unfair, because everything flows so naturally, so precisely, that she believes it was her idea. And in a way, it was. You simply guided the choice. That is how the game begins. Subtle, silent, calculated, yet always elegant. The first thing you must understand is this. Women are not attracted to the obvious. The obvious is predictable, and the predictable is boring. What awakens a woman's interest is the feeling that she is standing in front of a man who sees more, knows more, and rushes less. Machiavelli warned that the hurried man loses power because his urgency exposes his dependence on approval. So you never show hunger, you never show desperation, you never show need. You carry yourself as if you already possess what you want. And that is when she begins to wonder what your secret is. Seduction that feels too easy seems almost illegal because it disarms a woman's defenses before she can even build a wall. This does not happen through magic words, but through micro gestures. The gaze that lingers 1 second longer, the almost invisible smile at the corner of your mouth, the calmness of a man unafraid of silence. Women sense all of this with a sensitivity most men never notice. She picks up your posture, she notices the rhythm of your breathing. She detects the tranquility with which you occupy space. It is not your words that seduce her, it is your presence. The mistake of ordinary men is trying to compensate for insecurity with excess. They talk too much, they explain too much, they compliment too much, and excess exposes a lack of value. Machiavelli would teach that when you reveal too much, you lose the mystery, and mystery is the beating heart of seduction. What is hard to decipher becomes impossible to ignore. You do not give her your whole story, you offer scattered chapters, half-open sentences, calculated hints. She fills the rest with her imagination, and her imagination works in your favor long before you ever touch her. But seducing a woman with this level of ease is not about treating the process like an intellectual contest. It is guiding her like someone holding a delicate flame, firm enough not to let it die, gentle enough not to crush it. The Machiavellian secret is making everything look spontaneous. You plant small seeds, you let them grow in silence. And when she finally realizes what is happening, she is already deeply invested. Not because you pushed, but because you created the emotional conditions for her to walk that path on her own. Everything begins with your energy. Energy is not mysticism, it is behavioral reading. If you arrive tense, she becomes tense. If you arrive insecure, she closes up. But if you arrive with the quiet firmness of a man who has nothing to prove, her entire internal world reorganizes itself to try to understand you. That curiosity is the first step of Machiavellian seduction. And once you awaken the right curiosity, the rest unfolds almost automatically. She starts observing you more than she observes others. She listens to your words with unusual attention. She imagines things without realizing she is imagining them. Seduction happens inside her, not inside you. Women are highly sensitive to perceived value, not displayed value. Displayed value feels fake. Perceived value feels natural. You show value in the way you handle the unexpected, in the way you do not seek approval, in the way you speak slowly, in the way you remain composed when other men would fall apart. Every detail multiplies the impact of your presence. She cannot explain exactly why she feels something different, but she feels it, and that is enough. It is in this space between the conscious and the unconscious that seduction begins to feel almost illegal, not because you manipulate, but because you operate on a level most people never notice. You touch internal points that lie above language, and before she realizes it, she is already giving signals, playing with her hair, adjusting her posture, glancing at you at regular intervals, asking questions that seem trivial but carry intention. She begins to want your attention, and there is no greater power than that. When she senses that you control the rhythm, she willingly moves to your tempo. But you maintain the lightness, the charm, the calmness of a man who could walk away at any moment. And because you could walk away, she wants you to stay. The human mind values what it believes it can lose. Machiavelli knew it. Women know it too. And now you learn to turn this into a silent art. Machiavellian seduction continues exactly where ordinary men give up, in the subtlety. This is where you realize that women do not fall for brute intensity, but for slow layers, almost invisible layers, that stack themselves inside her without her noticing. The secret is not to impress her. It is to replace the idea she has of you with the idea you want her to have. And you build that with small impacts so natural that she cannot even categorize them as strategy. The first layer is emotional. You become a breath of air. Everyone demands something from her. Family, work, friends, social media, but not you. You become the space where she can relax, where she does not have to pretend, where she does not have to compete. Your energy says, I am not here to fight you, I am here to see you. And that sensation disarms any woman. The power lies in not wanting anything immediately while making it clear that you are present by choice, not by loneliness. The second layer is controlled unpredictability. This does not mean disappearing. It does not mean being cold. It means being slightly less available than she expects, yet more present than other men are capable of being. A calculated balance. You answer when you choose, but when you answer, it is memorable. You do not vanish out of ego, you simply have a life. And the moment she notices that, she adjusts to your rhythm. Your time becomes valuable to her because you do not hand it out for free. Men who throw themselves at her too quickly make her lose interest just as quickly. What comes too easy feels cheap. Machiavelli would say the power lies in the uncertainty of the other side. She must feel she can win you, but not immediately. Seduction is a game of stimulation and restraint. You show a little, pull back a little, provoke a little, stay silent a little. Every action leaves small footprints that she follows without realizing it. The third layer is selective attention. You do not compliment everything, you do not validate everything. You choose the right moments, and when you choose, the impact doubles. Women know the difference between an automatic compliment and an intentional one. Automatic sounds generic. Intentional hits the emotional system. Saying, "You look beautiful" is ordinary. Saying, "The way you adjust your hair when you're thinking is fascinating," touches something deeper because it reveals that you notice. Being truly seen is rare and dangerously addictive. The fourth layer is emotional control. She will test you, always. It is instinctive. She provokes, pokes, teases, creates little challenges, not to disrespect you, but to understand your internal structure. She wants to know if you're steady, if you have self-control, if you don't crumble over small things. If you react with irritation, you lose. If you react with neediness, you lose. But if you answer with humor, with calmness, with elegant detachment, you gain more emotional ground than any rehearsed line could ever give you. The illegal seduction begins in the tranquility you maintain while every other man loses control. And then comes the fifth layer, physical presence without urgency. It is not touching too soon. It is not rushing into impulsive kisses. It is letting your body language enter her space slowly. The closeness of your face when you lower your voice, the light touch on her forearm, the gaze that drops and returns. Not like a predator, but like someone who appreciates what he sees. Women interpret these details in amplified resolution. It is not the touch itself, it is the intention behind it. When the intention is mature, calm, grounded, she feels it. She senses herself becoming more interested than she originally planned. This is the moment seduction begins to feel illegal, not because you took anything from her, not because you forced anything, not because you conquered her directly, but because you created a space where she allowed herself to feel something. And when a woman allows herself to feel, the entire game shifts. Now she starts thinking about you during the day. She remembers the things you said. She looks for signs of you without admitting it. She checks if you saw the picture she posted. She becomes more open to conversations she would normally ignore. And most importantly, she begins testing you more frequently. That is the clearest sign that you are already affecting her. Tests are good. Tests mean impact. She only tests what she fears losing, so when the provocations come, you do not confront. You do not complain. You do not dramatize. You smile. You flip the frame. You lead. And through that, she understands something rare. You are not just confident. You are comfortable inside your own energy. That combination is almost extinct. She starts realizing that your calm company soothes her, your attention excites her, your absence bothers her, your presence marks her, and that you see beyond her surface. And no one resists for long being seen that deeply. Seduction happens when she realizes you can touch emotional parts other men overlook, and you do it without rushing, without pushing, just by existing like a man who controls his own axis. And when she senses this, when she feels she is losing control over her interest, she tries to hide it, tries to rationalize it, tries to pretend she is not involved. But her body betrays her voice betrays her eyes betray her. And this is the point where Machiavellian seduction becomes inevitable. The desire is already planted, you simply wait for it to bloom. When a woman begins to feel that you have an emotional impact she cannot explain, something very important happens. She starts seeing herself through your eyes. Every gesture you make creates an expectation inside her, and that expectation guides her behavior. This is the most delicate moment of Machiavellian seduction because it demands balance. Too much force makes her retreat. Too much softness makes her lose interest. It is in the exact dosage that everything feels inevitable, natural, almost forbidden in its precision. The next step is mastering a simple concept: emotional rhythm. Every woman has an internal rhythm, sometimes fast, anxious, cluttered with thoughts, sometimes slow, deep, contemplative. Most men try to adapt to her rhythm. You do not. You establish your rhythm and invite her to step into it. This changes everything. When your rhythm is calmer, more centered, more secure, she automatically slows down. She feels she is with a man who is not swept away by chaos, but one who controls it. This contrast creates almost instant attraction. And then you use the most powerful weapon in Machiavellian seduction: conscious silence. Not cold silence, not ignoring her, silence with intention. It is the moment when you simply watch her speak, smile lightly, tilt your head slightly, and let the moment breathe. Women are not used to this. They are used to men who rush to fill every silence. When you refuse to do that, you create tension, and tension is the oxygen of desire. Another crucial point is intelligent humor, not forced humor, not exaggerated jokes, not recycled lines, but surgical humor that reveals your sharpness. When she provokes you, you respond with a line that disarms her without disrespect. When she tests you, you answer with calmness and ease. And when she realizes you do not fall into predictable reactions, she understands she is facing someone who plays on a higher level. This kind of humor creates an intimate connection because it shows you understand her subtext. And then comes the most dangerous phase, the atmospheric presence. This is when your presence stops being physical and becomes psychological. She thinks of you before sleeping, in the shower, on the bus, at work. You appear in her thoughts without her permission. This happens because you were not overwhelming. You were unforgettable. Every micro-interaction left a deep imprint. It was not quantity, it was quality. And that is what makes you occupy an emotional space other men never even reached. Now this is where most men make their biggest mistake. When they notice the woman is getting involved, they start accelerating the process. They want quick dates, they want guarantees, they want to advance fast. Machiavelli would never make that mistake. The moment she starts missing you is the moment you must remain most elegant. The mistake is trying to close the deal. The correct strategy is allowing her to take small initiatives, not because you need her to, but because it strengthens her psychological bond with you. Women value what they also help build. If she participates, if she sends the first message one day, if she suggests something, if she expresses interest, it creates roots. You do not eliminate the mystery, you simply open space for her to walk toward you. That gives her the sensation of freedom. And freedom is essential for female desire. When she feels she is choosing you, her interest multiplies. At this point, you begin using proximity in a calculated way. When you are talking to her, lean in just a little closer than normal. Do not touch yet, simply reduce the distance. This activates internal sensors she cannot control. Proximity alters her breathing pattern, changes her temperature perception, and releases tiny doses of adrenaline and dopamine. You do not need to touch, just being close is enough. This creates a magnetic field between you, and when you finally touch lightly, slow deliberate touches that seem accidental but are not. A touch on the shoulder when she laughs. A brief touch on the hip when you walk behind her. A slow graze of the hand when you pass something to her. Every touch must feel natural and inevitable. Unexpected rushed touches break the spell. Subtle touches, on the other hand, build a narrative her body understands better than her mind. But perhaps the most powerful element is this: the way you look at her. The Machiavellian gaze is not intense all the time. It is calibrated. Sometimes you look deeply and say something serious. Sometimes you look away and leave her wanting more. Sometimes you hold eye contact for 2 seconds longer than normal. The gaze creates meanings words can never reach. When she feels that you see more than she says, a silent intimacy forms. And silent intimacy is addictive. This is why everything feels illegal, because you break the traditional logic of seduction and enter a deeper emotional logic. You touch parts of her that rarely get touched. You create an experience, not a technique. You stop being an option and become an atmosphere. And when that happens, she stops comparing you to other men. You are no longer a candidate, you become an enigma, and the enigma always wins. Then comes the moment when you realize she is completely invested but still refuses to admit it. She talks about you to her friends but hides it. She watches you when she thinks you are not looking. She replies to your messages quickly but tries to act casual. She gives signals she never gave before. All of this means one thing: you now control the emotional narrative. At this point, all you need is the same calm guidance for her to go even deeper. When a woman begins to rotate emotionally around you, the game shifts to a new layer, the layer of silent desire. It is that moment when she still tries convincing herself that she is in control, but deep inside she feels something in you slipping into her mind. This is the most sensitive and the most powerful moment. If you act like an ordinary man, you risk losing everything. If you act like Machiavelli, you turn her desire into inevitability. Here you understand something essential. Your job is not to win her. Your job is to make it impossible for her not to want you. The difference is enormous. Men who try to win chase, ask for attention, look for signs of approval. Machiavellian men create internal experiences that make a woman chase them, not because you are unreachable, but because you have become emotionally indispensable. The first step of this phase is mastering the art of selective presence. Before, you were present enough to build the bond. Now you gently reduce your frequency, not out of coldness, but out of strategy. You do not disappear. You simply allow her to feel your absence slightly. This creates small emotional gaps that she subconsciously fills by thinking about you. And the more she thinks, the more she wants. Intelligent absence is more seductive than constant presence, but this distance is mathematical, not emotional. You never disappear in important moments. You never leave her lost. You simply give her enough space for her to recognize that she misses you. When you do this, you return with charm, with light energy, with comments that show you remain stable and centered. She realizes your absence is never punishment. It is rhythm, a rhythm she begins to follow. The second step is deep connection, which is not built through obvious questions, but through conversations that reveal nuance. While everyone else asks, "What do?" you ask, "What do you seek?" While everyone else compliments her looks, you compliment her choices, her perceptions, her intimate gestures. You step into layers almost no one explores, and when you touch those layers, she opens without noticing. At this point, you must understand something essential. There is no Machiavellian seduction without self-control. The more involved she becomes, the more you must maintain strategic coldness. Not coldness of distance, coldness of a clear mind. You do not panic. You do not create expectations. You do not depend on her response. Women can feel the moment a man loses control over his emotions, and that breaks the magic. The seduction that feels illegal is the kind that keeps the enigma alive even when the woman is already completely interested. And speaking of enigmas, this is the time to intensify your mysterious side. Not with exaggerated silence, but with depth. You begin revealing stories you never shared before, but in a calculated way. Little memories that explain who you are, but not your entire life. It is not about opening everything, it is about opening just enough for her to feel she is entering an intimate territory few have ever seen. This makes her feel she has gained something special, something she needs to protect. Another crucial element here is emotional frequency control. She is more open now, more vulnerable, more connected. So you keep your energy light but measured. You do not exaggerate romance, you do not make declarations, you do not hand over your heart. Why? Because the female brain reacts in a paradoxical way. When you give everything, she relaxes too much and stops investing. When you give just enough for her to feel valued, but keep a small, invisible margin, she continues investing. Seduction is a dance, and you lead each step with intention. Then comes one of the most decisive phases, advanced body reading. Now, every gesture she makes says something. How she positions her legs when she speaks to you, how she tilts her head, how her fingers brush her own neck, how she holds her phone, how close her body gets when she laughs. You use this information to adjust your attitude. When she tilts her head, you speak softer. When she leans in, you stay firm. You do not pull back. When she touches her hair, you observe. This synchronized reading creates alignment and increases desire exponentially. Touch also enters a new stage. Before, it was subtle. Now, it can be more present, not invasive, not exaggerated, just aligned with the emotional moment. You hold her hand for 1 second longer. Lightly touch her waist when passing through a tight space. Place your hand on her lower back when guiding her somewhere. These touches activate her emotional system, create sensory memories, and associate your presence with positive feelings. It is a way of marking territory without saying a word. And then something natural begins to unfold. She starts opening up emotionally. She reveals fears, insecurities, and old wounds. Not because she needs to vent, but because your presence feels steady and grounded. Here is the crucial point. You do not become more emotional than she is. You do not try to fix anything. You do not turn into her therapist. You listen with a calm gaze, speak with few but meaningful words, and show understanding without excess. This creates deep trust. And deep trust is one of the most magnetic forces in the female psyche. At this point, she starts testing you in subtle ways, slight delays in replies, playful lines, jokes brushing the edge of jealousy. But now you understand the game. You respond with composure. Nothing shakes you. This self-control is what keeps her desire alive. Because deep down, a woman wants a man who is not emotionally fragile, a man who is an axis, not a burden, a man she can admire, not one she needs to manage. Then comes the true turning point of Machiavellian seduction. She begins to fear losing you. Not an obvious fear, not desperation, a soft, internal, quiet fear. She realizes you are different from the rest, and losing you means losing an emotional experience she cannot easily replace. This makes her more affectionate, more present, more available, more open. And when she reaches this point, you do not exploit it. You do not belittle her. You do not use the power against her. Instead, you become even more elegant. You show maturity, respect, and intentional attention. You become the man she always wished existed. And you do this without losing the mystery, the control, or the essence. It is in this balance that seduction begins to feel almost forbidden, because you guide her emotions without manipulation, influence without force, lead without pressure. You become the presence she chooses, the energy she seeks, the company she desires. At this point, you must understand something essential. There is no Machiavellian seduction without self-control. The more involved she becomes, the more you must maintain strategic coldness. Not coldness of distance, coldness of a clear mind. You do not panic, you do not create expectations, you do not depend on her response. Women can feel the moment a man loses control over his emotions, and that breaks the magic. The seduction that feels illegal is the kind that keeps the enigma alive even when the woman is already completely interested. And speaking of enigmas, this is the time to intensify your mysterious side. Not with exaggerated silence, but with depth. You begin revealing stories you never shared before, but in a calculated way. Little memories that explain who you are, but not your entire life. It is not about opening everything, it is about opening just enough for her to feel she is entering an intimate territory few have ever seen. This makes her feel she has gained something special, something she needs to protect. Another crucial element here is emotional frequency control. She is more open now, more vulnerable, more connected. So you keep your energy light but measured. You do not exaggerate romance, you do not make declarations, you do not hand over your heart. Why? Because the female brain reacts in a paradoxical way. When you give everything, she relaxes too much and stops investing. When you give just enough for her to feel valued, but keep a small, invisible margin, she continues investing. Seduction is a dance, and you lead each step with intention. Then comes one of the most decisive phases, advanced body reading. Now, every gesture she makes says something. How she positions her legs when she speaks to you, how she tilts her head, how her fingers brush her own neck, how she holds her phone, how close her body gets when she laughs. You use this information to adjust your attitude. When she tilts her head, you speak softer. When she leans in, you stay firm. You do not pull back. When she touches her hair, you observe. This synchronized reading creates alignment and increases desire exponentially. Touch also enters a new stage. Before, it was subtle. Now, it can be more present, not invasive, not exaggerated, just aligned with the emotional moment. You hold her hand for 1 second longer. Lightly touch her waist when passing through a tight space. Place your hand on her lower back when guiding her somewhere. These touches activate her emotional system, create sensory memories, and associate your presence with positive feelings. It is a way of marking territory without saying a word, and then something natural begins to unfold. She starts opening up emotionally. She reveals fears, insecurities, and old wounds. Not because she needs to vent, but because your presence feels steady and grounded. Here is the crucial point. You do not become more emotional than she is. You do not try to fix anything. You do not turn into her therapist. You listen with a calm gaze, speak with few but meaningful words, and show understanding without excess. This creates deep trust, and deep trust is one of the most magnetic forces in the female psyche. At this point, she starts testing you in subtle ways, slight delays in replies, playful lines, jokes brushing the edge of jealousy. But now you understand the game. You respond with composure. Nothing shakes you. This self-control is what keeps her desire alive. Because deep down, a woman wants a man who is not emotionally fragile. A man who is an axis, not a burden. A man she can admire, not one she needs to manage. Then comes the true turning point of Machiavellian seduction. She begins to fear losing you. Not an obvious fear, not desperation, a soft, internal, quiet fear. She realizes you are different from the rest, and losing you means losing an emotional experience she cannot easily replace. This makes her more affectionate, more present, more available, more open. And when she reaches this point, you do not exploit it. You do not belittle her. You do not use the power against her. Instead, you become even more elegant. You show maturity, respect, and intentional attention. You become the man she always wished existed. And you do this without losing the mystery, the control, or the essence. It is in this balance that seduction begins to feel almost forbidden, because you guide her emotions without manipulation, influence without force, lead without pressure. You become the presence she chooses, the energy she seeks, the company she desires. And once she realizes she is emotionally involved, she becomes even more open, ready to go deeper into the dynamic. When a woman is emotionally invested, you enter the most refined phase of Machiavellian seduction, the phase of psychological possession. This is when she feels, even if she won't admit it, that something inside her now belongs to you. It is a territory few ever reach, because it requires patience, subtlety, and precision. Here, you no longer aim to impress, you aim to consolidate. And consolidation is different from conquest. Conquest is earning interest. Consolidation is transforming interest into bond, desire into need, attraction into emotional loyalty. 1. Inverted mirroring. Instead of mirroring her, you let her start mirroring you. This happens naturally when you become her emotional reference point. She begins using your expressions, matching your reactions, syncing her mood with your rhythm. The more she sees herself in you, the closer she feels, and the harder it becomes to leave. 2. Emotional exclusivity. Not by saying she's special, but by making her feel special without saying it. You notice tiny details, remember her words, sense her mood shifts instantly. She feels seen in a way others never managed, deeply, uniquely, unmistakably. Every woman, even the strongest, craves to be seen like this. When she feels understood, the bond becomes hard to break. Here you use one of the strongest elements of Machiavellian seduction, the unspoken. What you don't say carries more weight than what you do. Intentional silence creates space for her to imagine, interpret, and project her desires. And the more she projects, the more involved she becomes. Machiavelli knew controlling perception is more powerful than controlling action. 3. Emotional predictability and behavioral unpredictability. She knows you're stable, centered, reliable, that never changes. But at the same time, she cannot read you completely. A sudden deep comment, a subtle shift in energy, a small unexpected action at the perfect moment keeps her alert and intrigued. This mix creates chemistry that feels almost forbidden, comfort and tension at once. And then comes the key phenomenon, controlled idealization. She starts seeing in you the very qualities she always searched for, not because you sold a fantasy, but because you revealed just enough for her imagination to shape the rest. 4. The energy dynamic. Feminine energy is deeply receptive to masculine energy. When you arrive calm, she softens. When you are firm, she adjusts. When you hold her gaze with seriousness, her body responds. Energy is stronger than technique. It's the feeling that your presence shifts the atmosphere. This cannot be faked. It is built through posture, breath, silence, rhythm, and gaze. At this stage, she begins to take clearer initiative. She texts first, sets up meetings, reaches out more, shows subtle jealousy. Not from desperation, but because she feels safe moving toward you. This is one of the strongest signs that seduction is reaching its deepest stage. But here lies the danger. Many men, sensing this shift, become too emotional, rush things, add pressure, or try to make things official instantly. This destroys the magic. Machiavelli would never make that mistake. You keep the same rhythm, the same calm, the same firmness. She moves closer. You receive her, but you do not throw yourself at her. You allow, but you do not collapse into complete surrender. You create a dance where she always has space to advance, but never total certainty of what she will find. Then comes the sensory confirmation phase. Every meeting intensifies desire. Touches become more intentional. Eye contact lingers longer. The atmosphere grows heavier. She senses something different in the way you connect, and it activates her instinct. She begins to feel physical, emotional, and psychological attraction merging into one. When these layers unite, seduction peaks. But still, you do not rush. Power lies in not appearing eager. You glance at her lips while she speaks, but don't kiss yet. You place a hand on her waist, but don't pull her in. You lean closer, but let the moment breathe. This pause creates electric tension. Her body wants the next step, but you control the timing, and the one who controls timing controls intensity. Then something fascinating happens. She makes your move easier. She stands closer. She touches you more. Her eyes fall to your lips. Her body becomes more inviting. The feminine leads when it desires, and she begins to lead without noticing. This is the point where seduction stops being strategy and becomes natural, fluid, inevitable. And when the kiss happens, because it will happen, it is not chaotic or rushed. It is slow, deep, calm, exactly like everything you've built. A kiss that confirms everything she felt, imagined, and desired. It seals the psychological bond, and after that moment, she cannot get you out of her mind. After the first kiss, something irreversible shifts inside her. Theory becomes reality, and reality confirms everything her imagination had been creating. This moment is critical because it decides whether the seduction stays an intense experience or evolves into a deep, durable, emotionally unbreakable bond. From here on, you must act with the same precision that carried you this far. Most men believe the kiss is the finish line. In Machiavellian seduction, the kiss is merely the ignition, the beginning of emotional fusion. What matters now is not the kiss itself, but how you behave after it. Common men shift. Some become needy, some become arrogant, some begin staking territory. You do none of that. You maintain the same rhythm, the same calm, the same centered, controlled presence. This gives her the intoxicating sense that you weren't destabilized by the moment. Or rather, you were affected just enough, but you never lost your axis. This skyrockets your perceived value. The kiss becomes a sensory anchor. Your composure becomes an emotional anchor. Together, they replay in her mind, again and again, pulling her deeper into the experience. Women bond through sensations, and you just activated several at once. From now on, your presence becomes addictive. At this stage, you master the balance between tension and release. You don't disappear, that would be childish. You don't cling, that would destroy everything. You remain present, but never anxious. She messages you, you reply naturally. She hints, you notice, but you don't react like a predictable man. She shows desire, you match it, but with controlled dosage. This maintains a connection that feels both stable and thrilling. Then comes the next element, deepening physical contact. You don't skip stages, you don't accelerate. You understand the most potent seduction matures like wine, not like a spark that burns fast and dies. You create intentional proximity. When walking, your hand brushes hers. When sitting, your body rests closer. When she laughs, you pull her gently by the waist. These micro-gestures trigger ancient biological pathways. Her body begins associating you with pleasure, safety, and desire. And the more her body learns you, the more her emotions surrender. But feminine surrender is never only physical, it is emotional. She begins sharing feelings without noticing. She asks for your opinions on personal matters. She subtly seeks your validation. This means you've become her reference point, the apex of seduction. When she uses you to interpret her emotional world, the bond deepens beyond return. Now you lead with more intensity. Aligned masculine energy isn't aggression, it is direction, not brute force, clarity. She wants you to lead. She will never say this aloud, but she will radiate it through unmistakable signals, longer eye contact, increasing touch, open posture, constant proximity. And when she gives these signals, you escalate with elegance, holding her face when you kiss her, wrapping her waist with intention, drawing her closer with calm certainty. Still slow, still controlled, still deep. Machiavellian seduction isn't explosion, it is magnetism. The more you master intensity, the more she melts. Then comes what most men never understand: psychological consolidation through controlled vulnerability. A deeply involved woman needs a hint of reciprocity. Not declarations of love, but proof you are not made of stone. You reveal a small, real, human truth. A detail few people know. Something that adds depth, not weakness. The moment she feels chosen to witness a hidden layer of you, the bond becomes devastatingly strong. When a woman feels chosen, she surrenders more, not from manipulation, but from connection. At this point, the relationship enters a new realm, shared intuition. She knows what you'll say before you say it. She reads your mood from your eyes. She feels your energy even from a distance. This is emotional fusion, a level few relationships ever reach. You stop being a man and become an experience. And then arrives the most subtle, dangerous phase, her need for confirmation of continuous desire. She wants to know if you want her as intensely as she wants you. She will not ask, she will test. Small scenarios, tiny setups, subtle situations, designed not to break you, but to reassure herself. You navigate them with Machiavellian calm. No fear, no insecurity, no irritation, just balance. Each past test deepens the bond. Each gesture of firmness expands her trust. Each moment of composure intensifies her desire. This is how a woman moves from attraction to involvement to emotional loyalty. A loyalty born not through pressure, but through admiration. The final phase of Machiavellian seduction is when everything feels natural, effortless, organic, yet the magnetism remains intact. She doesn't just desire you, she chooses you, silently, consistently, without needing to say it. Now, the goal isn't to convince or impress her, it is to preserve the magnetism, deepen the connection, and become unforgettable. Your presence becomes an emotional necessity. The seduction feels almost illegal in its effectiveness. Her body responds to your touch, her mind responds to your presence, her emotions respond to your silence. You've become her internal reference point, a source of stability she wants close. But this doesn't mean you relax. Consolidation now requires even more precision. 1. Stable masculine energy. She must feel that no matter what chaos surrounds you, your center never wavers. This isn't monotony, it is security. And security is the strongest aphrodisiac to the feminine mind. 2. Comfortable mystery. She understands you but hasn't fully decoded you. You aren't hiding, you simply have depth. Layers she discovers slowly. Stories you reveal naturally. Desires she uncovers with time. Women fall in love with depth, not surfaces. 3. Continuous sensory connection. It's not just touch, it's conscious touch. The firm hug, the intentional gaze, the slow caress on her neck, the confident pull at the waist. You don't overwhelm, you imprint. Her body memorizes you. 4. Emotional memories. The lingering gaze in the car, the slow goodbye kiss, the late night conversation, the shared laugh, the unexpected touch on the nape of her neck. These become emotional seeds, the memories she replays, the experiences that make you unforgettable. Seduction lives in detail, not exaggeration. And then comes the ultimate weapon, silent emotional strength. You never need to say, "I want you." She feels it. You never need to promise anything. She senses it. You never need to claim territory. She already gave you priority. At this point, it's not your words speaking, it's your energy, your posture, your composure, your gaze, your rhythm. She feels guided, and the feminine loves being guided by a masculine presence that is firm, calm, conscious. By now, you are woven into her life. She seeks your opinions, she watches your reactions, she waits for your validation. This is where most men fail. They relax too much. They drop their presence, their posture, their precision, but not you. The difference between seducing a woman and keeping her is strategic consistency. Your gaze stays deep, your humor stays sharp, your presence stays grounded. She must feel the man who conquered her still stands before her. And then the most powerful bond forms, spontaneous emotional loyalty. Not forced, not requested, born inside her on its own. The moment she realizes replacing you would be an emotional downgrade, she offers exclusivity without you asking. She gives priority without you demanding. She stays because she wants to stay. And the beauty of it all, she doesn't feel trapped, manipulated, or controlled. She feels chosen, valued, understood. Because from start to finish, you guided the process with intelligence, depth, and elegance. Seduction that feels illegal isn't sorcery, it's psychology, presence, energy, and precision. In the end, Machiavellian seduction doesn't end in domination, it ends in reciprocity. She doesn't feel conquered, she feels complete. She doesn't feel used, she feels alive. She doesn't feel pressured, she feels understood. And you, through unwavering control and presence, become the man she desires, respects, and chooses with conviction. That is the art.